Hello and welcome to the first edition of the Roster Royale Podcast. I'm your host, Omar Abshab, and let's get started. I want to thank all of y'all for joining me here today, whenever you're listening, wherever you're listening from. I've been wanting to do this podcast for quite some time, ran through a little bit of hiccups, but it's finally here, the first podcast day. Alright, so before we get started into the nitty-gritty, I just wanted to mention what I'm going to be talking about. Obviously, going to be talking about fantasy football, and when I speak about a certain, player or something, I'm going to be in reference always to a 12-team league, one quarterback, two running backs, two wide receivers, one tight end, one flex, kicker, defense, and bench spots. Now, you can always hit me up on Twitter if you have any questions at Omar Abishab, so that's OmarAbushaib. Feel free to send me a question and give me a follow back, send me some DMs. I already have a lot of people do that with me last season, and I'd love to help anyone who's interested in that. So, also going along with the 12-team league, we're going to be talking about half PPR. And on a quick note about the size of the league, if you're doing an 18 league, I really encourage you to go to at least a 10-team. If not, make sure you're adding some extra starting positions. Maybe add a third running back, a third wide receiver, an extra flex, stuff of that nature. Because in an 8-team league, the waiver wire is just full with talent. Everyone's teams are stacked. We need to make it a little bit more competitive. So making extra roster spots is one way to do it. The best way really is to get out of an 8-team league. Go to at least 10, if not 12. Okay, so the first thing on the agenda today is I wanted to talk about a couple of draft strategies that you should consider when you're coming up to your drafts here soon. It's already August 10th as of this recording, and second preseason week is when people really start drafting. So that's in a week. So the number one thing for a one quarterback league is late round QB. Please do not take an early QB, okay? The only person I would even sniff within the first 4 rounds is Aaron Rodgers, and I wouldn't even take him before the fourth round. Some experts out there might say late third. Not for me. For me, it's the middle of the fourth, sorry. But I rather just wait. If you're playing, especially if you're playing in like a 10-team league or a 12-team league, then you wait, because I can wait till the 10th round and I can nab Andrew Luck, whose ADP right now hasn't skyrocketed. Maybe after he played the preseason game, it will. But regardless, I can get someone like Andrew Luck, Matt Ryan, Big Ben, Matthew Stafford, Phillip Rivers, all these guys I can wait on, get them in the 9th or 10th round, and in the early rounds I get a 250 touch guy at running back, or 150 target guy at wide receiver, whatever it may be. That's so much better than going early round QB and trying to make up the ground at running back and wide receiver. Just do not do that. Please do not take an early round QB. Make sure you're taking the value at running back and wide receiver. The next thing I wanted to talk about is not being stuck on a certain draft strategy going into the draft. So I used to be like this. I used to say I have to get my running backs no matter what. And that can really trip you up, because once you take a couple of running backs, then other people are going to be like, wow, I need to get a running back. And that's going to start a run. And after your second pick, you're waiting, especially if you have the 101 or you have the 112, let's say, and then you take in this year's draft, say like someone maybe like Dalvin Cook falls to you, and then on the turn you get Devontae Freeman or whatever it is that they may fall. But then you don't pick until another 24 picks later. And by that time, there's going to be a run of running backs. So if you force yourself into taking a running back, you might be looking at someone like Rashad Penny. And right now, it doesn't even look like he's going to be the starter to open the season. Now, the season's 16 games, and talent usually rises to the top, so we'd expect Penny to get his way in there. But I mean, Pete Carroll, if there's ever a coach to not care about the equity he spent in a draft pick or whatever it may be, it's Pete Carroll. So I could legit see Carson's, you know, holding on to his job for quite a while. So just keep that in mind as well. So be flexible with your draft strategy. Next thing is, which is kind of counterintuitive to what I just said, but if I'm doing a two wide receiver, especially two wide receiver leagues, if I have a top four pick, I'm going running back. Then Antonio Brown enters the fold for me. But after that, I'm going running backs again with Barkley and Kamara. And then maybe we can talk about Julio, Odell, and Hopkins. See, the thing is, you can't walk into 300 touches, but if you have to get yourself one of those running backs, honestly, because for me, after around the third or fourth round, once we get into the Jai, Alex Collins, and all the, Sonny Michel, Rashad Penny, all the rookies and stuff, Derrick Henry, and, all that stuff, like the middle to late RB2s, it's so ugly. I mean, some of them can break out. That's true. But there's just so much, like, worrisome going on over there that I want to get an early three down back early in the draft, and I feel like I can make up the wide receivers. So my philosophy has always been, when you're playing fantasy football, I like to go running back early. Although I'm open to switching. Like I said, you can't just be, hard headed about it. But I'd like to ideally get an earlier three down running back, because in the NFL, usually, sometimes you put two running backs on the field, but usually one running back is on the field during offensive play. But for wide receivers, you could have two or three wide receivers on the field at the same time. So what that means is I can get a three down running back, and then I can get a second wide receiver like a Juju Smith-Schuster who broke out last year, something like that, and I still get great production. I can't really draft the backup running backs for a lot of teams. Some teams that works, like Tevin Coleman, that might work for a situation like that. But more often than not, we have a bell cow running back, and the backup is useless. So I might as well get the three down running back, and then later on make up room in the draft by getting wide receivers. And I'll take a couple of dart throws. I'm more happy with taking a chance on wide receivers than running backs. Okay, but if you're not like that and you like to go wide receiver early, I will say it is more fruitful if you do the zero running back strategy, if you hit. But that's a big if. So if I went Antonio Brown in the first and then came around and somehow, let's say, like AJ Green or someone like that fell to me, and then maybe Doug Baldwin, T.Y. Hilton, something like that. You go three or four wide receivers, then maybe in the fourth round you went like Zach Ertz or Anyways, you go three wide receivers, four wide receivers, or three wide receivers and a tight end, and then you think about running back. If you're doing that at the end of your draft, when you look at your bench, it should be all but like one or two running backs. You have to go like five straight running backs and then maybe a quarterback, then like two wide receivers and more running backs. You need to hit on at least two of your late round running backs for that uh, draft philosophy to be useful. So if I did that type of zero wide receiver strategy, I'm gonna take my chances on Jordan Wilkins, who Marlon Mack just hurt his hamstring. I'm gonna try to take some darts on maybe a backup running back. Um, you know to a bell cow running back. So if they were to get injured, then I could be walking into a huge touch load with someone like that. So if that were to happen, if the cards fall your way and let's say Todd Gurley gets hurt, and then you have his backup who's gonna get whatever amount of touches, and you already have Antonio Brown, then yeah, that strategy is fruitful. But then you're just banking on injury, which is not something I ideally want to do. I like to be able to do stuff that's predicted. So that's why for me, if I'm doing a zero something strategy, it's zero wide receiver. Like I mean, I did say don't go into a strategy with like you have to do something, but if the cards play right, I prefer a zero wide receiver strategy. So let's say go running back heavy to start. I'm at like the 8-9 turn, say, and I get Fournette and then Cook on the turn, come back around, and then you get someone like I don't know. Let's say everything works out with LaShawn McCoy, and he's good to go. Maybe someone like LaShawn McCoy. And then you come back around, and then if you want to take a chance on like, say Jay Ajayi or Darius Geis, those are two of the people in the middle rounds of that area that I'm starting to warm up to. There's some question marks, Geis not 3 down, but Chris Thompson's come out and said he might not be fully healthy until like November, and every time he does like a move, he's thinking about like, am I gonna get rolled up on? Alex Collins, he had a really good year last year, but the Ravens didn't invest in him. He had a fantastic year, but they turned around and only gave him a 1 year deal. And for me, that says something. Nick Collins could go prove so wrong, and he could go ball out. But Kenneth Dixon is still there. And if he can stay out of his own way, stay healthy, stay out of trouble, the guy is extremely talented. So I could see him middle of the season coming away with that job. So I haven't been getting a lot of shares of Alex Collins in drafts, but there were some rumors that Kenneth Dixon was on a roster bubble. I don't know if I'm buying all that, but I'm just a situation to keep an eye on. And then so back to the zero wide receiver. So you go Gordon, Cook, then McCoy or Mixon, then you go Geis or Ajayi, something like that. Now we're in the fifth round. And in the fifth round, I can go get myself a wide receiver like Marvin Jones as my wide receiver one. Yeah, it doesn't sound all great, but remember, I have 2 3 down backs in Gordon and Cook. Mixon as well, if he fell to me, or McCoy, they could be 3 down backs as well. So I have 3 huge 3 down backs, and then Darius Geis is not a 3 down back, but Chris Thompson is not completely healthy, so he could be getting more passing work than we're anticipating. Then I go get Marvin Jones as my wide receiver one. I come back around, and usually when I do the zero wide receiver, because I'm already having a lot of upside with my bell cow running backs, I try to get a little more safer wide receivers. Um, Someone who's always good for some touchdowns is Michael Crabtree. So I can get Marvin Jones, Michael Crabtree. Then I come back around, and then in that round 7 area, especially in a half PPR, full PPR, if that's what you do, someone like Jameson Crowder, who I love this year, Alex Smith, you know how he is. He likes those people that are open. Dotson is a really good talent, but Alex Smith before last year, until I see it again, he's known this guy. Crowder is gonna get open, and they're already saying he has a good chemistry with Crowder, so I like him this year in the 7th round. So now you have Marvin Jones, Crabtree, and Crowder. And if you didn't want to go Crabtree, you could have gone maybe like Sammy Watkins, Corey Davis in that same range. And then here's where I think is interesting. If you didn't, someone that you should keep an eye on is Julian Edelman. He's probably going in round 7 or 8 in your league. And I'll get to Mark Ingram in a second. But Julian Edelman suspended 4 games, as we all know. Here's the thing. I learned firsthand, you know, from mistakes myself of what to do with players who are suspended about 3 or 4 games. So if you're in a league where like the majority of your team makes the playoffs, like if you're in a 12-team league and it's 8 teams make the playoffs, you better draft the suspended guy because you have a lot more room for error, and also for teams that are not like 8 out of 12. Let's say you have 10 teams and only 4 make the playoffs. It still doesn't matter because they're not suspended in the middle of the season. If they're suspended in the middle of the season, it'd be a completely different thing. They're suspended in the first 4 games. That's when everyone's healthy. That's when everyone has no buys. That's when you can find a lot more replacements on the waiver wire, which is why if I take Julian Edelman and then I get a wide receiver later on, maybe someone to fill, maybe I got like a Josh Doctson or Cole Beasley, Anthony Miller, someone like that, DJ Moore, someone just to fill in a few weeks with my already bell cow running backs. If I'm doing the zero wide receiver strategy, then I'm set when he comes back. I did a zero wide receiver strategy. Edelman is a fantastic, wide receiver too when healthy, and with Tom Brady. Then I also have Marvin Jones, and then a third wide receiver, and Corey Davis or Watkins or Crabtree, something like that. Then your team is stacked. Okay, so this is why I love the zero wide receiver strategy, because the wide receivers at the end of the draft, there's so many of them, and you can start taking dart throws, and you can hit on some of the rookies like Anthony Miller or the second year players like Chris Godwin, Mike Williams. So that's why I love doing that. And speaking of suspensions, I was asked this question the other day about where do I take Mark Ingram. Well, it's the same thing as Edelman. This is a guy who got, I believe it was around 70 targets last year as a running back, and that's including Kamara, who had 101. That's crazy. And Breeze is one of the most accurate quarterbacks at getting the ball to his running backs. He's always around 80, 85%. And the league average is somewhere near 75%. So if you're getting a guy who's catching the ball 8 to 9 times out of 10 compared to the league average of 7 out of 10, and you're in a half PPR or PPR, that's such a bonus. And even if you're not in a PPR, I'm sure if you might have heard this before, but catches are more valuable than carries. Okay, so that's why you can have a Kamara who doesn't have a whole lot of rushes, but he has a ton of catches, or McCaffrey doesn't have a whole lot of rushes, but he has a ton of catches, being super successful because catches are more valuable. You get more yards per catch compared to yards per carry, etc. So Mark Ingram, we already know, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, rushing, and if he's getting this target workload out of the backfield, and you're getting him in the 5th or 6th, the end of the 5th, maybe early 6th, somewhere around that range, depending on your league, man, that's a steal. He's a bona fide RB2. And last year we've seen him finish as what, a top 5 running back? That's value you can't pass up. You're only missing him for 4 weeks. So you can just get a Jamal Williams will cover 2 weeks until Aaron Jones is back, if that's what you want. Maybe Chris Carson holds the job down for 4 weeks. If you take him later, you take someone like, I don't know, Bilal Powell or Crowell with Elijah McGuire out. Maybe even C.J. Anderson, you're hoping he gets some TDs and takes on that Jonathan Stewart role from last year, but an even better version, which is entirely possible. Peyton Barber, he looked fantastic in the preseason game. He's running ahead of the ones. He's running with the ones ahead of Ronald Jones. He's a great value right now in around round 12, round 11, round 13, wherever. It just kind of depends. That's great value for someone that's running with the ones. You get him for a couple of weeks, Mark Ingram comes back, and your team is loaded. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about, another strategy is please, 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 please. If you're not drafting on Labor Day weekend, which means you only have a couple of days before the season starts, do not take a kicker or a defense. This is a strategy I started maybe about 5 years ago, and it's the most fruitful strategy, one of the most fruitful strategies you can have. When it comes down to the 15th, 16th, 17th, depending on how many roster spots you have, the last couple rounds, if you haven't taken the Jags defense in the 14th round, then this rule applies to you. But also, please don't take the Jags defense in the 8th or ninth round. You're passing up on way too much value. I know they were great last year. I know they were fantastic. But there's going to be some touchdown regression coming for them, in terms of interception returns or fumble returns and stuff like that. And just taking a defense in the 8th or ninth round is ludicrous. Now, so back to the don't take a no kicker defense. What I do is in the last 2 rounds, I take dart throws. Last year, in some of my leagues where I had drafted before the Spencer Ware injury, I knew about Kareem Hunt. And if you guys don't know about Kareem Hunt, you will know about players like this by listening to this podcast. So last year, I knew about Kareem Hunt. And in the last 2 rounds, in multiple leagues, I took him instead of taking a kicker or defense. Spencer Ware goes down, and I had a top 5 running back with one of my last 2 picks to already go with the bell cows I got earlier in the draft. Needless to say, I won about 90% of the leagues that I had Kareem Hunt in. Okay? So don't take a kicker, don't take a defense, take some dart throws at running back or wide receiver. I love taking, backup running backs to the bell cow running backs because, it's a terrible part of the game, but it does happen. Injuries do happen. So I'd rather be prepared. I know it sucks, and I do never wish injury on anyone. But I'm going to be prepared. I'm going to take high upside players. And then if they don't pan out a couple days before the season, you pick up a kicker and a defense. You want to stream those positions anyways. And a lot of leagues are now doing no kicker, which is a pretty fun strategy if you don't want to worry about all that. Some people like it because they looking into, the wind and, doing all that stuff. If you don't want to, get rid of it. I play in some leagues that don't even have it anymore. And a question I just received not too long ago again is about IDP. I've done IDP leagues. IDP leagues are fun, but you need to have the right league mates for it, okay? Because there are going to be the people who, pay attention to the max. They look at weak offensive linemen when they're looking at defensive linemen to play. They look at, who runs a lot versus who, when they're trying to pick up a linebacker to get a whole lot of tackles, or a cornerback that gets targeted a lot, that gets a lot of pass breakups and interceptions. People will go deep into that. Then you'll have another player who will just start the same 3 each and every week. And it kind of nullifies the importance. So if your league is not super competitive, I just advise staying on to the normal DST. So those are some of the strategies that I wanted to talk about today. The next thing I wanted to talk about is I had this question about, am I worried about Le'Veon Bell and Josh Gordon being away from the team? Okay, let's talk about Le'Veon Bell first. Le'Veon Bell did this last year, okay? He started out slow, I will give you that. But your league is not won in weeks 1, 2, and 3. Okay? Obviously, you're trying to win. And Le'Veon Bell wasn't terrible. He just wasn't, the top 3 running back that he always is. But he was still giving you, decent production because regardless of how efficient he is as a runner, he's always going to give you receptions out of the backfield. So even if he's, slow out the gate as a runner, not reading the right holes, not in sync with his offensive lineman, he's still going to get, catches out the backfield. He's still going to score his touchdowns. And this is their last year with Le'Veon Bell. They're going to run him into the ground. They don't care about where he goes next. They don't care about if he's injured. It's his last year. It's a contract year for him, so obviously he's trying to ball out. It's the last year for the Steelers, so they're going to make use of him. I'm still taking him at the 101 over Gurley. And that's just me. That's a preference. If you take Gurley, that's okay. But I feel like there's some touchdown regression there coming for him. He scored 6 receiving touchdowns last year. That's not going to happen. I know they lost Watkins, who had a lot of red zone targets, but still 6 receiving touchdowns with the rest of the touchdowns he already scored. That's a lot to ask for any running back. So Le'Veon Bell still taking him out 101 or 102. 101 for me because come playoff time, he's going to be in full shape. He's going to win me a league, multiple leagues. Now Josh Gordon. So originally I was like, what is going on here? But the more news come out, people are saying that he's actually staying away from the Browns facility and stuff because of hard knocks. And if that's the case, then I'm actually super excited about him because that just tells me he's trying to be the best that he can. He's trying to work hard. He's trying to stay clean. So we're not really having to worry about him getting suspended. I know the downfall is he's not getting chemistry with Baker and Tyrod, but this man is a freak. I mean, they'll get it. They'll get it within a couple games, and he's gonna be open a lot because he's just that good of an athlete. He's just that good of a football player. He came back last year after 3 years of missing football and put up respectable numbers. The game versus the Chargers, which was stood out to me, he had 4 for 85, I believe, but Kaiser missed him on at least 3 touchdowns. The man could have had at least 200 yards and 3 touchdowns, and he was playing versus Casey Hayward, one of the league's best cornerbacks, and the Los Angeles Chargers, one of the league's best defenses. And in his first game back, he almost dropped 200 yards if he had a better quarterback. Tyrod Taylor gets a knack for being a very conservative quarterback. But if you remember, when Watkins was healthy, when they were in Buffalo together, Watkins was actually getting some shots downfield. Tyrod's actually not a bad deep ball thrower. He doesn't throw it a lot, yes. But when he does go deep, he's actually a pretty good thrower of the ball deep. And we all know Baker. Baker is very accurate. If Baker got inserted, obviously that's a boost to Josh Gordon's value. Because the thing with Tyrod is if he doesn't see something he really likes, he'll probably go off and run. I feel like Tyrod specifically hurts Jarvis Landry a lot in terms of he won't check it down because he might as well run it at that point. But the Browns have said that they want to use Landry in a myriad of formations, move him around the formation, outside, inside. So he could be improving on that yards per catch, which really does need to improve on because it's pretty sad that he had over 100 receptions last year and less than 1,000 yards. So hopefully he improves on that. And yeah, so that's where I am with Le'Veon Bell and Josh Gordon. I'm not worried. I'm still drafting them. And, if Josh Gordon, he might start falling it, and I might start getting him at an even better value. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about is some players I've warmed up to since the draft. And I kind of mentioned it earlier. And one of the players is Jay Ajayi. I kind of warmed up to. At first, I was like, I don't know. They just use so many running backs there. And that's still the case. Darren Sproles didn't come back for no reason. He's going to have a role in the offense, same as Corey Clement. But LeGarrette Blount's not there. So you have Jay Ajayi. He's going to get the goal line work. And if you look at his snaps from when he was traded to the Eagles, it increased each and every week, except for obviously the Super Bowl, which, it was smart on the Eagles to use Corey Clement versus the Patriots' weak linebackers. They exposed them. He had 100 yards receiving. It makes sense. And that might happen sometimes where the Eagles want to use, Sproles and Clement as a matchup-based play. But the Eagles are a really good team. More often than not, they're going to be winning. And who's going to be their grind-out running back? Is it going to be 35, 36-year-old Darren Sproles? No. It's going to be Jay Ajayi. So that's why I love him in this offense. And he's actually not a bad pass catcher. They're not asked to do that much a lot, but he's still a decent enough pass catcher. And with they're most likely having positive game scripts, he's going to get enough carries, even if throughout the game it's kind of spread out between him, Sproles, and Corey Clement. Another guy I mentioned earlier, Darius Geis. Um, I was worried about his value in PPR leagues, but Chris Thompson. The more we hear about him, the more I'm warming up to Darius Geis, and I'm loving him more. I think he's my number one rookie running back right now. With the injuries to Sonny Michel, you know, Rex Burkhead and Jeremy Hill as goal line backs could steal there. Yeah, I'm having Geis as my number one, and Chris Carson with Penny, Ronald Jones behind Peyton Barber. A lot of these rookies are, it's not looking as good as initially planned. I think Royce Freeman is behind Devontae Booker, although I think if the one's gonna uh, get becoming the starter the earliest in the season, it's probably gonna be Royce Freeman because Devontae Booker is just not good at football. I got suckered into it before. I mean, when CJ Anderson got hurt, I'd pick up Devontae Booker, but he's just not that good. He's a good pass catcher, running back. He could do that, but as a running back, as a runner, he's just not that good. He was not even the starter last year, and they cut their starter. So what makes you think that they want to play him when they cut their starter and then they went and drafted Royce Freeman? They're telling you he's not that good. He's just another guy. He'll probably be used on third down alongside D'Angelo Henderson. But Royce Freeman's the best running back on that roster. He'll get that early down work, get the goal line work. And, we need touchdowns at the end of the day. Sorry, I went off on a little rant. But back to Darius Geis. Chris Thompson, as I mentioned earlier, said he might not be healthy till November. Still, by not being healthy till November, the fantasy playoffs is in December. So that's middle of the season, end of the season. Darius Geis could be a baller by that point, and he's going to get more work in the passing game than anticipated. If Chris Thompson's not right, he's already a really good runner on the ground, and so he's probably my number one running back in that area of Alex Collins, Jay Ajayi, you know, Derrick Henry, those guys, Kenyon Drake. He's my number one in that area. Oh, since I brought up Derrick Henry as well, I'll talk about a couple more running backs. Today's podcast is just going to mainly be about breaking down the draft board. So, Derrick Henry in the middle of the 5th round is probably where you'll see him. Man, I was so pissed when they signed Dion Lewis, man. The Titans, oh my god, they pissed me off. I was so excited. Had Dion Lewis not been on this roster right now, you'd be drafting Derrick Henry in the 1st round. I would, at least. Because that man could be a top 5 running back if he was a 3-down back. He's that talented. But since they got Dion Lewis, since they got, new head coaching staff, and they were the ones who signed him, it wasn't like the old regime signed Dion Lewis and then they came up to it. Matt LaFleur, coming from that Sean McVay offense, he's going to want to use running backs out of the backfield, and that's obviously projected to be Dion Lewis. Derrick Henry is going to obviously get the goal line work, and I think the offense is going to be a lot more fruitful this year. Last year it was terrible. As a Mariota owner, I was frustrated many times. The offense was so inept. It was run the ball on 1st down with DeMarco Murray, run the ball on 2nd down with DeMarco Murray. It's 3rd and 7, and then look for Delaney Walker, incomplete or interception. I mean, it was terrible. It was so predictable. I wanted to throw my remote at the TV every single time. So that offense is going to be a lot better than last year. So I think there's enough room for both of them to be successful. But if I have to choose between Darius Geis and Derrick Henry, I'm probably going Darius Geis, even though I'm a huge fan of Henry. Yeah. Another guy let us all down before, Lamar Miller. Royce Freeman's still on the PUP. I mean, sorry, not Royce Freeman. Dante Foreman. Dante Foreman's still on the PUP, and so long as Foreman's on the PUP, Lamar Miller's getting all the reps, and then Achilles isn't an easy injury to come back from. It's going to take some time. He could start the season on the PUP, and that gives Lamar Miller 6 free weeks. Lamar Miller has shed some weight. He looks quicker. He looks slimmer. Watson's coming back, and, when you have a running quarterback, it opens up stuff for a running back. If you remember, before Watson got hurt, Lamar Miller was good. He was getting about 20 carries, maybe 80 yards, and a touchdown or two, and 4 yards of carry is respectable. It's not like an elite running back, but it's better than what he was giving us, the year before. So I'm warming up to Lamar Miller. Like I mentioned, Mark Ingram. That's some guy I'm targeting in a lot of leagues. If he's there, I'm taking him. I don't care if I have 4 running backs. If I have to choose between Mark Ingram and uh, maybe Robert Woods, I'm gonna take Mark Ingram. And I know that sounds stupid, but for me, I'm a guy who does a lot of trades. Now, this applies to people. If you like to do a lot of trades, if you're someone who's always manning the trade wire, manning the waiver wire, you're super active. I don't mind overstacking on running backs. Or doing it in wide receivers is kind of suspect. I mean, it could work, but come the season, everyone needs running backs. There's where the most injuries are. There's where the most change at starters, with rookies coming in and whatnot. But I myself, let's say I take Le'Veon Bell, all right? He has some injury risk. And let's say I take Christian McCaffrey in the second round, who also has some injury risk because he's a smaller running back. And one of those two gets hurt, right? Then I want to have a Mark Ingram coming back who's going to give me high RB2, maybe low RB1 numbers. So, honestly, I will still take him even if he has to be my 4th running back or even my 5th running back because he could just be that good. And if he comes back and he's balling out and you don't need him, your team's healthy and he's your 5th running back, then you go and trade him. So, if you remember, I said between him and Robert Woods, if Mark Ingram comes back and he's like a high RB2 is going to give you someone like, in terms of wide receiver, if you were trading for him, maybe like Juju Smith-Schuster, Allen Robinson, Brandon Cooks, Alshon Jeffrey. I'd much rather that than Robert Woods. So I might as well take Mark Ingram. I can survive 4 weeks with suboptimal wide receivers, not elite wide receiver. If I have 3 or 4 like bell cow running backs, like I said before, you can make up so much ground at running back. People that go in the 10th round, 9th, 10th round, just play people that could really be decent wide receiver twos like Cameron Meredith, Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, Calvin Ridley, Anthony Miller, Cole Beasley. Dak Prescott just came out and said like he's his number 1. Nobody's talking about it. Everyone wants to talk about Allen Hurns and Michael Gallup. And I know Cole Beasley is not a sexy player, but half PPR, full PPR, Dak's not an accurate quarterback. Okay. Those options to Cole Beasley are his best options. So he's gonna like that. Alright, so yeah, that's where I stand on Mark Ingram. A little rant there as well. Rashad Penny, man. Oh my god. I don't know what to do with Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll is something else because he drafts a running back in the first round when they have so many other needs. They lost Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor retired, Earl Thomas is holding out, their offensive line is terrible, got a little bit better, but still bad. And he takes a running back, and then camp comes around, preseason comes around, and the running back is not even first on the depth chart. I guess maybe you could say they were worried about Chris Carson's health, and then now he looks healthy. But a first round running back, you could have waited to the second round and still got a good running back. You could have done what other teams did. They traded up, maybe go get like a Darius Geis, Nick Chubb, something like that. Oh man, Pete Carroll, something else. So yeah, Penny, I'm kind of staying away from him right now. What I would do if I was, a drafter, during the league, I'd go after Chris Carson because he's cheaper and he's starting. I mean, his ADP is probably going to rise. And ADP, if I haven't mentioned before, is going to be average draft position. If I ever mention ECR, that's the expert consensus rankings. And for me, if I ever mention ADP or ECR, I'm going to be going off the ADP or ECR from the Fantasy Pros website because that combines all the experts from all the sites and it kind of compiles all the average draft positions of all the sites. So now I'm not just talking about one specific site and other people are like, well, I don't draft on that site. So I'll use the Fantasy Pros website and I use their ADP and their ECR. But Chris Carson's ADP is going to rise, obviously, with people seeing he's starting. But I'll take him, especially if he's still lower. And then maybe a couple weeks into the season, Rashad Penny owner might get restless. Then I trade for him because I still think by the end of the season, the talent will rise to the top and Penny becomes the de facto starter. But I'll get him on the cheap. Instead of investing a 6th, 7th round pick in him, I'll trade him later for a cheaper guy when that guy gets mad. He drafted a guy supposed to be his RB3, his flex, and he's not doing anything for him. So I'll trade for him then. Running back I haven't touched on, who I do like him a lot more in Dynasty, obviously. Hopefully, maybe if LeGarrette Blount got cut, but that's Kerryon Johnson. I mean, there's 4 running backs right there right now. There's Kerryon Johnson, LeGarrette Blount, Amir Abdullah, and Theo Riddick. Kerryon Johnson's the most complete back there. Abdullah can be a complete back, but I wish the best for him, and I hope he really gets cut or traded. I want him to go to another situation, somewhere where he can have a chance to shine. But LeGarrette Blount's just going to be a red zone killer. He's just going to get the touchdowns if he's still there. So he might not make the roster, but at the same time, he probably will. Matt Patricia's coming over from the Belichick style. Belichick loves rotating the running backs, and he went and got someone that used to play for the Patriots, so he knows how to use. He saw him being used in the red zone each and every week in practice, nonetheless. So he's probably going to use him in the goal lines, and then Theo Riddick is going to be in the James White role. He's going to come in on third downs. He's going to come in, maybe in the red zone area, outside the 20s and stuff, or near the 20s, I should say. And then Kerryon Johnson is probably going to be used as the Dion Lewis. He'll catch some passes, he'll get some runs, but in the end, he's not like the 3-down running back. But for Dynasty, Blount only has a year. He's only signed to 1 year. Abdullah's gone after the year. And then so it's just him and Riddick. And Riddick only has 2 years, but they traded up for Kerryon. You got to remember that. So they want to use him. So I like Kerryon. There's 2 backfields that I'm keeping an eye on, which can be very fruitful if someone steps up. And that's the Colts backfield and the Packers backfield. And a quick note on that is the most successful running backs come from great offenses. So that's why, if you notice, Andrew Luck, Aaron Rodgers, those are the 2 quarterbacks in the backfields I just mentioned. If I can get a running back who's the lead back there, they can be super successful, and especially where they're going. Right now, with Aaron Jones, let's talk about Green Bay. Right now, with Aaron Jones suspended, Jamal Williams has a leg up. For me personally, Aaron Jones is the most talented running back on that roster. He's the best running back. But Jamal Williams is going to get 2 weeks to, show his worth. But at the same time, it does kind of work out for him, for Aaron Jones, that the Packers play the Bears and the Vikings the first 2 weeks, which are actually not easy teams to play. They both have pretty good run defense. The Bears actually, you might laugh at that, but they're actually a pretty good defense, and they got better this draft. They added some pieces, so he could start off slow. Those games are at home, though, for the Packers, and, in Lambeau, Rodgers is going to be Rodgers. He's going to ball, so that could open up things for him. So I'll take a shot on those 2. And then you also have Ty Montgomery there, which kind of a buzzkill because he's going to stay working that 3-down, the wide receiver role. But he's kind of small, so he could be getting hurt. Not that I wish injury on anyone. But if someone from that backfield, if you want to take a chance on 2 of them as a late round flyer, maybe you did the 0 wide receiver, the 0 RB strategy, and you want to take a chance on Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams, or one of them hits, you could be talking about a top 5, maybe top 10 running back. And if you got him in the, somewhere like in round 9, you're balling out. That's fantastic value. So yeah, And then with the Colts backfield, Marlon Mack has a leg up right now. But the guy I like the most in that backfield is Jordan Wilkins. He's the most complete player there. Naeem Hines is going to be a running back that's going to catch passes out the backfield, third down back. Marlon Mack is, he's an okay player. I just don't think he's special. Great change of pace guy. They couldn't even give him the full workload over Frank Gore, who was a fossil. I mean, that is, to be fair to him, it's ineptitude coaching, but I mean, it still holds true. If Jordan Wilkins came out of this backfield as the clear workhorse, man, he could be just same with the other guys. He could be a top 10 running back because the running backs that are most successful, you need at least 200 carries. Wide receivers that get 200 carries are at least the RB2 or better 95% of the time. And wide receivers that are on like top 5, top 10 offenses that holds as well. Those are your most successful running backs. So that's where I usually try to target. So that's what's holding back someone like Joe Mixon, who I really love. I love the man's talent. He's a mix of. He's like a Le'Veon. He's kind of Le'Veon Bellish. And honestly, that might sound like high praise, but excuse me. He's a really good running back. He's a fantastic running back. He's super talented. Problem is, Marvin Lewis is still there. He's holding back that offense. I was so excited when Marvin Lewis almost left. Broke my heart when they ended up bringing him back for one more year. It's such a shame. But he has a 3-down talent. Gio Bernard's still there, but Mixon is one of the better receiving backs in the league. He hasn't, been able to get that reputation yet, but you'll see it soon enough. He's a really good running back. Coming out of the backfield. So he's a guy who's you're sitting at maybe you're probably drafting him as a high RB2, maybe low RB1, depending on where Jordan Howard, Jerick McKinnon go. But he's definitely after Gurley, Bell, Zeke, Johnson, Kamara, Barkley, Gordon, Hunt, Fournette, Cook, and then McCaffrey if you're PPR, and then Freeman. So that's 11, 12 people. So he's probably a high RB2, high end RB2. But he could be a top 5 running back this year. That's if the offense is good. That's what's holding him back. He has the talent to be the number 1 overall running back in fantasy, but the offense just isn't good enough. They did improve the offensive line, though. They traded for Cordy Gunn. They drafted a offensive line. They drafted a center. So that offensive line is going to improve. It's going to help Dalton in the passing game. Hopefully John Ross. They cut Brandon LaFell, so John Ross is going to get more work. He could stretch the defense. If he could start coming to in his zone. If you look at a lot of the quarterbacks that played with someone like Deshaun Jackson, they've all improved their completion percentage and passer rating just in the 1 year or so that they played with Deshaun Jackson. And that's what a deep guy's, a speed guy can do. Look at Alex Smith last year with Tyreek Hill when he really broke out and they used him a lot. That type of speed you can't teach. And, excuse me, the defenses, they have to respect that speed. This is a guy who ran a 4.22 That is insane. Whether or not you think it was actually accurate, because there's some people grumbling like, oh, it didn't really look like it. But the man is a burner nonetheless. So you put him on the outside, a cornerback is going to have to play off. You're not going to line up playing press man versus John Ross. Unless you push him out of bounds, you get him to the ground. If he gets a step, you're done. You're toast. I mean, just good night. Just stop even playing. You better hope you have safety help over the top, and he better be fast. He can close down the area. But if you have cornerbacks playing off, you get Joe Mixon coming out. You get him a little out route coming out the flat. He has space. John Ross is gonna clear out space for you, and you have AJ Green, who's a monster. He's going underrated right now. I mean, this kind of being disrespected a little bit. It's not really his fault. It's just because the Bengals are just so meh. So, but he's still a top 6 wide receiver in the NFL. Maybe top 5, depending on if you want him or Michael Thomas. at the 5 spot after the big four of Hopkins, AB, Julio, and Odell. Not that order. Don't spam my Twitter. Um. So yeah, Mixon, I'm loving. Mixon sometimes falls to me at the top of the third, and if Mixon is my third running back, I'm ecstatic. Like I legit could get a draft where I go Bell and then Jerick McKinnon and then Joe Mixon, or maybe even David Johnson. If I was a little bit back, maybe David Johnson get a better second round running back, maybe like Devontae Freeman, and then Joe Mixon. And then I look at a wide receiver, and then I can get like an Allen Robinson. Man, you're starting off those first 4 rounds. I mean, Robinson's more of a wide receiver too, but going back to the zero RB versus zero wide receiver strategy, I'd rather be behind on wide receiver than running back because wide receiver, what do? You follow the targets. Running backs, you follow the touches. So I'm gonna get the guy who's getting the touches for sure. But wide receiver, even though you follow the targets, you need to get. Sometimes you can get the second or third wide receiver on a very prolific offense. So like Cameron Meredith, because his injury, he's going really like kind of late, maybe in 9th, 10th round. I can get him later as a wide receiver 3, and he could kind of go into that Marcus Colston-esque possession style receiver role. People forget, 2 years ago, Cam Meredith with some inept quarterback play in Chicago, he was pretty good. Now you're going into a dome. You're going to play with Drew Brees, a quarterback that's been, he broke the record again last year after Sam Bradford broke his passing completion record. Drew Brees was having none of it. He said, "Let me get that back." So he broke it again. Super accurate. And Kamara, with Ingram suspended, especially the first 4 weeks, Kamara will be used more inside as a running back. Cam Meredith can get a lot of targets. So I'm fine with getting a wide receiver 2, a higher wide receiver 2 as my wide receiver 1. If my flex is Joe Mixon, who could be a running back 1. So if I had David Johnson, Devontae Freeman, Joe Mixon, and Allen Robinson, then I'm already I have 3 RB1-ish players and then a high wide receiver 2. That's better than taking for me like T.Y. Hilton, who's maybe a wide receiver 1. And then coming back around and taking Kenyon Drake. So if you're asking me, do I rather Joe Mixon, Allen Robinson, or T.Y. Hilton, or maybe Tyreek Hill, someone like that, and T.Y. Hilton and Kenyon Drake versus Joe Mixon and Allen Robinson. Give me Joe Mixon and Allen Robinson every day because Joe Mixon could be a top 5 running back. Drake, please don't get me started. He's such a baller running back, such a talent, but Adam Gase is annoying. He's super annoying. As a fantasy owner, he just pisses me off because you have a guy who's so talented. I mean, when he burst out on the scene, he was balling out. Monday night, if you put on the film versus the Patriots, he was juking linebackers out their socks. I remember there's one play, he was behind the line of scrimmage. I can't remember who met him behind the line of scrimmage, but he hit a nice spin and he busted it out for a big 30, 40-yard run. He just has the instincts as a running back. He's just explosive. He's just someone that's such a baller. But then they go inside Frank Gore. They list him as co-starters on the depth chart. Frank Gore is a freaking fossil. Maybe a Hall of Famer. Probably. He's just been really good for so long. But, he's so old now. He's like 34. Why? Just give the ball to Kenyon Drake. And then they got Kalen Ballage, who they probably might want to use, in the receiving game, especially because he's really good catching the ball out of the backfield. And he's really explosive, too. If I knew Kenyon Drake was going to be a 3-down back, I would take him over Jordan Howard. Oh, I don't know. Because then it comes back to the offenses. Miami's offense is terrible, so I don't know if I'll take him over Jordan Howard, but because he would get more catches. But Matt Nagy is a good offensive mind. That offense should be better. I'll tell you what, I definitely take him in round 3. I wouldn't be waiting till round 4, and I would be a lot more confident in him. I'll have to look at that. I'll have to think about that where I'd take him, but Yeah, right now he's not a three down running back. And I touched on Frank Gore. Please don't draft Frank Gore. Let someone else draft Frank Gore. Frank Gore is not going to win you a fantasy league. And this goes for not just Frank Gore, but any other player like Frank Gore. Stop taking players in the late rounds that are not winning you fantasy leagues. They will not lose you fantasy leagues, but that's not the objective. You don't go into the year saying, I don't want to lose this year. No, I want to win this year. I need you to take in the high upside players, the players that can hit. Please don't take those middle of the ground, middle of the pack players, like Frank Gore. Take the high upside players. Take your chances on take Spencer Ware. Maybe something happens to Kareem Hunt. He's a really talented running back. He might even get some work even with Kareem Hunt there. Take Jordan Wilkins. Take Peyton Barber, who's right now the one. Please don't take Frank Gore. Players like that, stop taking these safe. At the end of the round, I do not want safe players. I talked about Cole Beasley earlier, and it's not someone I'd love to take. I'd rather take an Anthony Miller, more upside. But that was only like if you needed a filler for Edelman until he comes back, because once Edelman comes back, he's your starter. So you just have to understand how you're drafting. If you're taking some suspension players, maybe later on in the draft you'll take a little more safe players, but you're still hitting some upside. Okay, don't get me wrong. Don't just take all safe players. You need to hit both, because when Edelman comes back, then you're stuck with all these safe players. So make sure you're hitting upside, guys. Maybe just take one safe player that you think that can see you through 4 weeks. Okay, the last thing I wanted to touch on before we wrapped up this episode of the podcast, wanted to get into the mailbag question. I had a question from Jordan Price on Twitter, and that's at JRPrice94, and he asked me, when determining quarterback success, specifically for the rookies, what do I look at? What's the most important factor? And for me, the most important factor has to be coaching. Okay? And this doesn't just go for quarterbacks. This kind of goes for other positions as well. But just give a couple examples. We all know Jeff Fisher sucks as a head coach, right? He was spared from being the all-time losing his head coach by being fired. I was really bummed about that. I wanted him to get the record because he deserves it. But we saw the year-over-year difference between Case Keenum when he went to Minnesota, Jared Goff when Sean McVay came over there. Both of them looked like NFL quarterbacks when they had good coaching around them, right? The pieces around Goff, they added some pieces. Yes, they got Robert Woods. They traded for Watkins. They drafted Cooper Kupp. They signed Robert Woods. The pieces were different. So the year before they had Kenny Pickett stuff. Obviously, I understand talent around you matters. Obviously, everything matters. Your own talent around you matters. But for me, number one, if I had to answer right now, it'd be coaching, because look at the success Goff had from year over to year. His talent didn't really change, but he still missed Watkins a ton going deep. He's still not that great of a deep ball thrower. He was accurate when he went to Woods, but whenever he went towards Watkins, who was covered by ones or double teamed, he was inaccurate. But Sean McVay just opens up stuff. Elite level coaching made Gurley from a bust to the number one overall running back, number one overall player. Jared Goff looked like from a bust from number one overall draft pick to, respectable quarterback. You look at right now, why are we talking about Jerick McKinnon? That man has not shown to be a capable first and second round running back. He's shown to be inefficient. But he went to Kyle Shanahan. And we know Kyle Shanahan is a genius. And so what are we doing? Although, don't get me wrong, Jerick McKinnon is a freak athlete. But his production hasn't matched that on first and second down. But we're drafting him as a 3-down back because Kyle Shanahan's there. And that's what the best coaches are. It's about maximizing talent, no matter whether or not they're good, elite, bad, everything. Those types of coaches are where I want to draft players from, and those are the most successful offenses, as I spoke earlier. Running back specifically in elite offenses, more often than not, they finish as RB1s. I mean, obviously, if they're getting the carries, not if they're doing, a 300 split monster. So, wow, we got to an hour on the show today. Didn't think that was a successful first episode. Um, I was hoping to start this podcast a lot earlier. Things just happened, so it's August 10th at the earliest of when you're hearing this. So sorry about the late start, but I'm going to be recording another one this weekend, reviewing the preseason games, stuff I learned, and just some other things that I wanted to talk about. And so I'll release that. So hopefully we get 2 done this week, and I'm hoping to do maybe 2 or 3 each week, if all goes well. So follow me on Twitter at Omar Abushaib. That's OmarAbushaib. Tweet at me some questions. I'd love to help you guys out. We're about to get into draft season, so I know you guys need all the help you can get right now. Send me some questions and I'll be happy to answer. That'll do it for the first pod. Have a great one. Y'all don't really want it like